A zoning mistake on a listing cost a buyer and a seller a lawsuit and a huge pile of money. I'm going to get you started on this story starting right now. This is KW Real Estate News and Views for the week of March 9th. Hey friends, the weather was amazing on the weekend. I was out with brand new clients, looked at 5 properties. Every open house we went to, super busy. So I'm thinking perhaps March is going to turn out to be a fair bit busier than January and February. Certainly they were slow. I'll keep you posted at month's end about what's gone on with the March market. Now, on with today's story. A zoning mistake on a listing cost a buyer over $200,000 down in LaSalle. That's a little kind of suburb of Windsor, long ways away from here. Anyways, read about this in Real Estate Magazine. Here's what happened. Lady purchases this property right at the height of the market back in 2022, listed for 300 grand. She was in multiples. She was the highest bidder. She was well over 500 grand when she purchased this property. The deal comes up on closing and she goes, I'm not closing, I can't get financing. Anyways, it didn't close. The sellers came after her because they had to relist and resell. They ended up getting mid-threes for it. So they went after her for the damages because, of course, she was in breach of contract. Well, here's what happened. Here's her justification in court. The woman said that the property on MLS wasn't listed correctly. It said residential in the zoning, and in fact, it was zoned W2. Well, that's one issue. Yes, that absolutely should have been correct on that listing, but let's apply what happened with court to the contract. When you buy a house, agreement of purchase and sale, page 3, there's a title search blurb, and it talks about the buyer and seller making no future claims on the use of the property, like what you can use it for or whether zone changes are going to happen, any of that kind of stuff. It just gives the present usage of the property, which said residential, and that in fact was correct. That was the present use. And even in the case of this zoning being in error on the listing, what it changed to W2 was also allowing residential usage. So she wasn't in any danger there. What she was claiming though was that she couldn't get financing. This change to W2 status had changed her ability to get financing, and that was her rationale for not closing. Now here's where the whole story gets interesting. As I had said, the contract part of things is perfectly fine. What the judge wanted to look at was what had happened with this listing. Well, yes, the listing agent should have had W2 in there. I can tell you this Cornerstone, my board, a number of years ago, we used to just put residential on a listing. That's no longer appropriate. We actually have to look up on the zoning map. It's not difficult, like if it's R4 or NMU 18. In the case of NMU 18, for example, that's mixed-use residential commercial, very similar to this W2 that we were talking about in Windsor. Anyways, you got to look that stuff up. You've got to have that on the listing because buyers should have the correct information. Anyways, the judge wasn't looking at that though. I mean, they knew that it was wrong, so they wanted to know, okay, what happened with the buying agent and his client? Well, in this case, the judge found that there was animus between the two of them. I mean, obviously things got very testy. But thank God the buying agent had actually done their due diligence. They had gone to LaSalle's planning department, and they got the correct zoning, and they had a conversation via text with the buyer on the day they wrote the offer, and they said, hey, this is actually W2. Well, she proceeded. She didn't put a financing clause in, so she was between a rock and a hard place, as the saying goes. The judge sided with the sellers. She got judgment against her for well over $200,000 to make up that shortfall to the sellers. Anyways, this is just another example of you're working with a real estate agent. Make sure they're doing their due diligence for you because as the Romans have said, caveat emptor, buyer beware. Anyways, that's all I got for you this week. Thanks so much for watching and have yourself a phenomenal day.